On Saturday, Chelsea won the 2025 Subway Women's League Cup, beating Man City 2-1 at Pride Park. In this video, we analyse how Chelsea created space to open up Man City, why City struggled to score despite having more of the ball, and what both sides can take from this match into the other 3 matches in this Chelsea City saga. This is how Chelsea beat Manchester City in the Women's League Cup final. Alright, let's get into it. Today we're going to be breaking down the Women's League Cup final and looking at how Chelsea reclaimed the Women's League Cup for the first time in 3 years. It was an important victory, Harry. It felt like the celebrations were somewhat mellow on Saturday. I think the next few weeks and how much of a toll that will have on the players is in their minds, but the celebrations were still there on Saturday.
Yeah, exactly. We knew it was always going to be a bit of an unknown and a bit of a bizarre game because Chelsea and City have got to play each other 3 times now after this final. And we know that for Chelsea, that at the end of the day, the League Cup is an objective rather than a success for Bonpastor. That's the way they're viewing their season. So yes, it is from a Chelsea point of view, it's one of those where it just feels like they've just ticked off another objective, another opportunity. But it is a big competition. It's another domestic cup in the bag. It's one that Chelsea haven't won in a while. It was a really well contested final. It could have gone either way. Man City, credit to them because they fought very well. But at the end of the day, champions do what champions do, and Chelsea managed to win the game. And it's a cup that I think that is important to Chelsea because, as we say, the quadruple isn't just a dream in Bonpastor's mind. It is the goal. It is what she wants to aim for. It's a very, very good start.
Yeah, and that's been made abundantly clear, and that has been set as the goal from the start of the season. I think we've seen the ruthlessness that Chelsea have had throughout this season, the fact they haven't lost a game in any competition yet. There is just that constant desire to win, and I think an important win here in the League Cup. It's the first step of the 4, but if you thought the first step, you can't get all the way. So, I think win the League Cup, claiming the first trophy that was available this season, important for Chelsea. And let's analyse the game though. To start, it was fairly even in the early encounters, both sides having chances. It was Chelsea who took the lead fairly early on though in the 8th minute through Mayra Ramirez. Harry, good goal.
Yeah, it was a good goal. I think that in terms of the play towards the goal, it was one of those, as you say, where first 5-10 minutes it's always been nervy and it did start out cagey, but the difference is that Chelsea's experience shined through because before either side really had settled into the game, Maya Ramirez finds the back of the net, and it was a really nice piece of play down that left-hand side. And yes, it's a bit fortunate, the actual finish in the end, the way that Yamashita ends up saving it into Alexandri, who knocks it back to Ramirez for an open goal. But the actual piece of play, the play from Macario, the ball from James, and the initial run from Ramirez was deserving of a goal. And credit to Yamashita for saving the first opportunity. She had another really, really good game. But yeah, it was one of those where neither side had really settled down yet. But Chelsea's experience, Chelsea's big game players stepped up and gave them an early lead. And I think what was a really frustrating moment at the time for Man City and for people who didn't want Chelsea to win because it felt like that was game over already, which it didn't turn out to be. But I think the objective for Man City would have been don't concede in the first 5-10 minutes, keep it tight and see what happens. To concede after 7 minutes was very, very frustrating.
Yeah, Chelsea were very effective with what they did. So they're very effective at isolating Mayra Ramirez against Alexandri. And we saw this battle because even when Ramirez was against Gracie Pryor held her own. But when Ramirez took on Alexandri, there were mistakes there. And I think Chelsea really effectively isolated Ramirez against Alexandri. The way they did it in this first goal, it's quite smart. Hampton plays out to the left-hand side. It's just about kept on by Sunday Baltimore. And then you notice this run of Kat Macario. Now that does 2 things. One, it obviously offers an option for Baltimore to pass to, and she does use that option. But 2, it drags Hasegawa with her. And it leaves a wide expanse of space in the midfield. So Hasegawa goes with her. Both our City's other midfielders are more advanced midfielders. So there's just a huge space left. Macario receives the ball, manages to take it past Hasegawa, and suddenly they've got the space to work with. She plays into Lauren James. James comes inside. Loads of time in there.
Yeah.
Because of the lack of midfielders at Man City. They've all been dragged out of position. Hasegawa is then caught out wide. Space for Lauren James. She plays the ball in behind. It's a really good ball into Mayra Ramirez. Ramirez then shrugs off Alexandri very effectively. And as you say, the goal looked somewhat fortuitous, and it was in the end. But the build up to that, I think, was very effective play from Chelsea that warranted the opening goal.
Yeah, it's one of those where, from a Man City point of view, you cannot afford to give players like Lauren James that time and space in the middle of the park because, for the goal, she played a brilliant ball through to Ramirez, but she could have ran into that space and taken an effort herself, which would have probably troubled Yamashita as well. So it was really costly for Man City. It massively let them down, and it meant that so soon in the final, they were already having to climb up what felt like a pretty steep hill at that point to go 1-0 down to Chelsea, a side who haven't lost a game yet this season, in a domestic cup final. It felt like Chelsea already were in control of the game.
But they responded very well. After the goal, they started to have a lot more of the ball. They dominated possession throughout most of the first half, really. And to be fair, that again, similar to when these two sides met in November, City had a lot of the ball. And actually in this game, which was different to the one in November, they did actually create some chances with it. And it did feel, though, that City was just missing a bit of link-up, a bit of calm in their attack in the first half. There were so many times where, because Chelsea were trying to play out from the back and City were winning it back quite effectively, then they'd have chances. Those were their best chances of the game, but the problem is they weren't linking up effectively in attacking areas. When they played forwards, they played very good possession-based football, but because Chelsea were settled in their rest defence, or settled in their defensive phase, I should say, it's very difficult for City to break them down. So, and they struggled to, and we know City struggle to break down low blocks, and when a defence is well organised, they struggle. They like to play the ball out wide, then look for crosses against weaker opposition. This is an effective method of breaking them down, because Khadija Shaw won't be challenged in the air, and City will score. The problem that came here, though, was that Millie Bright, Natalie Bjorn, Lucy Bronze, Sondi Baltimore, at times even, headed away everything that came into that penalty area. So City's method of scoring wasn't effective, and once that didn't happen, they just, in the first half, looked like they'd lost belief in the fact they were going to score.
Yeah.
Because they just couldn't find a route to goal. The amount of balls went into the box that, against another team, Shaw heads home, were very high. So City just couldn't find a goal. And I think this frustration built up, and then Chelsea suddenly sprung forwards.
Yeah, it was one of those for City where I think that, as you say, if there's another opposition against a side who potentially aren't as strong defensively, or even if all it took was for one of Bright or Bjorn, if they'd put a foot wrong, if they'd missed a header, or if they'd skewed a clearance, then it probably would have led to Man City having an opportunity to score. But Chelsea just got everything right. It was an incredible defensive performance, especially in that first half. And it was one of those where City were doing really well to come forwards, but just weren't able to get the shots away. I mean, I know Hampton made a good couple saves, but there wasn't any clear-cut chances. And we'll touch on it in the second half with their actual goal. But too many times just trying to force it out wide or force it into the net, just trying to practically pass it into the goal. And they learnt their lesson in the second half and they just decided to shoot and it worked. But in that first half, just trying to pass it into the 6-yard box every single time.
Yeah, and I think Chelsea's defenders, though, deserve credit for that performance. Millie Bright was, I think, on the right line of physicality with Khadija. Sure, it's easy to be too aggressive and just wipe her out, but I think Millie Bright was treading that line quite nicely. I think, obviously, she picked up a yellow card eventually, but she was very good in this game, Bright. But yeah, a very strong performance up against what is probably one of the best strikers in the world right now in Khadija Shaw. And yeah, fullback's good again. Bjorn was good, and as you say, Hampton had to make some really important saves as well. But yeah, Chelsea sprung forwards with an opportunity. Myra Ramirez in again. And this one really should have gone in. Yeah. Arguably a better chance than the first one.
Yeah, it really was. And this was after City had just been having waves and waves of pressure, and I think they got comfortable with the ball, and they got comfortable with the fact that they were spending the majority of the game in Chelsea's third, and I think that caught them out a little bit because suddenly Chelsea turned on the style again, not the ball, managed to actually play out, and it worked, and found that lovely ball to Ramirez to put her through on goal. And City just weren't prepared for it. They're completely caught out. Alexandri was the only defender who was anywhere near Maya Ramirez at the time. Again, how she was left on her own to handle Ramirez because City got so comfortable. They ended up finding themselves very, very high, and they were very lucky not to be punished by it. Ramirez
tries to round the... I mean, Alexandra got shrugged off. Ramirez fixed the ball, tries to round Yamashita. It's a really good goal getting from Yamashita because she positions herself in a way. She times it and positions herself in a way that makes it very difficult for Ramirez to know what to choose what to do, because she was sort of at the perfect distance where a chip wasn't really going to work. She'd narrowed the angle quick enough that she hadn't gone too early, and then Ramirez would just slip past her. But she had narrowed it very quickly, and then Ramirez didn't really want to try and have a shot because Yamashita had narrowed that angle. Tries around the goalkeeper. Yamashita does well then to see her wide, and Alexandra gets back in. Doesn't matter if Ramirez puts it into the side netting anyway, but it's a really good chance for Chelsea, and it would have put the game to bed in that moment, you feel?
Yeah, I think that even if it didn't put it to bed in terms of the scoreline, because 2-0 you could technically still come back, but I think it would have been a knife through the heart of Manchester City, because they went 1-0 down early on. They then had pressure. They've had a constant pressure on Chelsea for 25-30 minutes. They looked the better side in the first, as that first half went on. They got better and better, and if Ramirez had scored that chance, I think that would have just Man City would have already lost that game.
Yeah.
So it was key that Ramirez didn't score there, because it meant that I think that it set up very nicely for in the second half to be a really competitive game. But City did get away with that one, but for the amount of chances they did have in that first half, you feel that they were, they deserve to get away with one.
Yeah, so moving to the second half then, did it feel like a City goal was inevitable?
Yeah, well, this was the bizarre thing. At half-time, it felt like one of those where Chelsea were winning, but City had been the better side, in terms of they had been on the ball more, they'd had more pressure, and it felt like Bonpastor would have changed something, should have made an adjustment, and as we've seen so many times this season, when Chelsea haven't been at the level, something has changed, and they come out in the second half and they play superbly. That didn't happen. There was no change between the first and the second half. The second half picked up where the first half left off, and that was really interesting to see, because I thought we'd have seen some reaction from Chelsea, because yes, they were leading, but the performance up until that point hadn't been brilliant, but there was no improvement. And yeah, I think the way that City were coming forwards, it felt at some point they were gonna find the back of the net, or there was going to be a big moment that it was building up to, and eventually they did find their goal. But yeah, it felt like one of those where you could feel it coming. And I think both sides would have known that. So the fact that Chelsea didn't adjust to that was surprising.
Yeah, and I think Bonpastor got lucky in a sense, because she, in this game, wasn't proactive with her substitution. No. She was very reactive. And the problem is, she didn't see... I don't know... I mean, obviously they'd have noticed it, but she didn't make any change to stop Chelsea conceding. If that goal didn't come for another 10 minutes, would there have been time then for Chelsea, with their change on the pitch, to go and get a goal? Yeah. Probably not. But because City scored earlier on, that forces the hand then of manager Bonpastor, and Chelsea make the changes, and then they go on and score to win the game. But, I think they're fortunate in that regard, because City were coming forwards and Chelsea were riding their luck for a bit, and there was no sign that Chelsea wanted to change anything. So, yeah, I think in that regard, somewhat fortunate. For Gino's strike, it's really, really good. She picks up the ball, carries it quite a distance. Then Chelsea just seem to hesitate. No one wants to put the pressure on. They all think, she's going to play a pass, or someone else will do that. And that results then in her finding the confidence to take a strike. I do feel Hannah Hampton should have done better with it. I know she complained that she couldn't see it, but I still think it's just above you. Put a hand up.
Yeah,
like you've got to be. You know where the ball is. Yeah. When you're not seeing it pass, you've got to be expecting that shot. No one's charged it down, which the defence should have done better. There, someone needs to go and put pressure on it. But I still feel like Hampton should have done better with that one.
Yeah, it was one of those where, as I mentioned with the first half, City spent too much time trying to pass it into the net. So as expected for this moment, Chelsea, including Hannah Hampton, expected for Gino to pass the ball and try and get it into the 6-yard box and then pass it across the goal line. But no, for Gino, informed player, backed herself to score from range. She was given the time and space to have a good effort, and fair enough to her. It was a good strike. As you say, Hampton should do better. Chelsea defensively, it's just really poor for an experienced defence like that to just assume that a player's going to pass it. Was really a little bit naive there, and Chelsea were punished for it. And at that point, City had been the much better side in the second half. They just scored a brilliant goal. They had all the momentum, and it felt like in that with the time that was allowed, either we were going to go to extra time, or it was going to be Man City who would nick a winner.
Yeah.
And then Chelsea won the game.
Indeed. Just to mention on Fajina though, it felt like a really poignant goal because it was a game where City weren't able to find a goal. She stepped up and she found
Yeah.
the goal. It was a game where Khadija Shaw was frankly quite poor. You know, some of her shots she lashed at. There were chances she had that she should have done better with. She just didn't test Hampton when she did get a shot, and it's no surprise then that she was hooked with City needing a goal on 80 minutes. But yeah, Firmino stepped up in that moment. Unfortunately for her, unfortunately for City, that wouldn't count for much because eventually Chelsea did find a breakthrough. It's a very disappointing way to win a game, really, but Chelsea won't care. They've won the trophy, and the ball goes on the right hand side. They cross it into the box. Hasegawa has to do something with it because Hamano is behind her, and she just gets it all wrong. I think she wants to play it out, just kick the ball out straight, but it's bobbled up, hit her on the calf, and it goes towards her own goal. So she goes towards her own goal. A really unfortunate one, and yeah, that's just football sometimes. A player who never makes mistakes with a very uncharacteristic mistake here.
Yeah, it was a really harsh way for one side to lose a final. It's one of those freakish own goals where we sit there and go, if that goes anywhere else, it gets stopped by something. If the fact it looped up perfectly to go over her own centre half and we went straight into the far corner, so Yamashita couldn't get there. If it goes near post, Yamashita could save it. If it's a little bit lower, then the two centre halves one of the two centre halves could have headed it away. It was it's really unfortunate for Hasegawa and Man City. And as I said, it felt like after that Firmino goal, if you'd asked me to pick a winner, I would have said Man City because they'd been the dominant side in that second half. They played the better football and they had the momentum. And then it all again, Chelsea, like they did for their goal, their big chances in the first half, just played the ball quickly, countered against Man City. Credit to Ramirez, it's a good ball across the box. It was a dangerous ball in, and it forces Hasegawa to make a decision and make the error. But it will be I think it will be really frustrating for City because if they turned up, it was more frustrating than if they turned up and lost 2 or 3-0 because at that point you'd go, well, fair enough. Cushing's been in 5 days. Chelsea are unbeaten. That's not a bad result. But the fact that they took the game to Chelsea, they were probably the better side across the 90 minutes, and they still ended up losing. It will be in such a manner with an own goal as well. Yeah. Horrible way to lose a cup final, and I feel for Man City because they've not had a great season of it, but this was probably one of their best performances of the campaign, and they came away with absolutely nothing. And
I don't know if I'd go that far. I think they did well given the circumstances, but they didn't really create anything clear cut in the game. They had chances. I
don't think that's their fault though. They put pressure onto one of the best sides in the world for 60, 70 minutes. They can't really do much more if Chelsea didn't put a foot wrong. So because again, if one or two missed headers in there, or if a couple shots taken quicker, and City could have scored 3 or 4 with the amount of pressure they put onto Chelsea, they did really well. Hampton pulled off some brilliant saves. It's one of those where on another day City could have scored quite a few, and I think they'll be very disappointed.
Yeah, I think it's a game where if City had created better chances, they would have scored quite a few. I think of the chances they did have, they didn't really create anything that was high quality. The only goal they scored was a fantastic strike from Ayoba Firmino. So in that sense, I think City did well to hold on to the ball and progress the ball, but I still think that their final third chance creation was worrying. It's something that won't be a problem in the FA Cup, in the league. Sorry, not the FA Cup, in the league because they're playing lower opposition. We know that City always have the option to play the ball out wide, cross into the box. They know that's a fairly effective method of finding goals for them. Where it will impact though is in these big games where they've got Chelsea in the Champions League and League over the next 3 weeks, and they play Manchester United in the FA Cup. Those are going to be the games where if City don't work out how to create chances, they simply can't win them. That's still a problem, I think, for Manchester City.
Well, yeah, I think it's now going to be very, very interesting. Obviously, they now play Chelsea for another 3 times. If all 3 of those games play out exactly the way that final did, City will win at least one of them, and that is something that Bonpastor will be very aware of, and that Chelsea are going to have to play a lot better because they can't. They won't get the same fortune in the next 3 games, and they are some big ones now. Not as much the league game because United went and slipped up, but those UCL ones, Chelsea got to be careful because that standard to play that. I mean, and they weren't. It's not that they were bad in the final, but to be okay or play decent in a final and come away with winning it is I think is a little bit fortunate. But I think they'll be aware of that. At the end of the day, they got the job done. They won the game and they got the trophy.
If Ramirez rounds the goalkeeper successfully or slots it past her on 30 minutes, it's 2-0 Chelsea and the game looks fairly out of sight. So I get your point, but I think it could have been more comfortable for Chelsea on a different day. In the same sense, you think City could have won it on a different day.
But I still think if Ramirez scores that, Chelsea only win 2-0. I don't think they'd have gone on, pushed on and scored more. But it depends how.
It's impossible to say. But I think it's I think it was a well executed performance from Chelsea against a very decent City side. I think we forget that yes, City haven't been the best this season. Yes, they've had a bit of a drop off, but they're still an incredibly strong team. And in fact, Chelsea did struggle against them, but that's because they're a good team. The weakness for City was at centre half, and what Chelsea did was build a system and play in a way that made that weakness heightened, and that's why their chances came through Ramirez, through the middle, up against Alexandri in those 1v1 situations, isolated against them, because that is how Chelsea were going to generate the most threat, and in those moments, Chelsea did create chances, which they scored and should have scored. So. I think in that regard, it was a well-executed tactical performance. The big question mark now comes, obviously, with the nature of this little series of Chelsea-Man City. How do you now apply this into Wednesday's game without City going, well, they did that on Saturday, so they'll probably just do that. And that's now going to be the problem. Some takeaways that could apply to these games. I think what we learned is that Nick Cushing's certainly not going to take any shit.
No.
He is there now he's coming into the role. He wants to compete. He's passionate about winning. And we saw that in the final. And I know, it is the easiest game to motivate yourself for the final. But he still came in and on the sidelines was demanding more. And I think that was really important. If he'd come in and gone, it's okay, guys, whatever happens, enjoy the cup final day, then you're setting the standards low. But if you come in and go, this is a cup final, we're good enough to compete, we're here to try and win it, which was the message throughout the week, which was the message I think echoed to the players, that made a difference. And City came and they competed. So I think with the next 3 games in mind, that's an important thing. Nick Cushing is here to compete, and I think he'll want to win at least one of them, if not more. The other thing we learned, Chelsea are not infallible. There are gaps in the Chelsea team. There are weaknesses that can be exploited. However, what we've also learnt throughout this season is they are inevitable. There is an inevitability about Bon Pasteur's Chelsea side. In this game, there were times where they faced a flurry of chances, but they saw through that. They rode through those moments and they took their chances when they came. And even once they conceded, there was just this air of they'll have another chance. They'll get a goal. And I think that's really important for Chelsea right now, especially looking forward to the UWCL games across the next 2 weeks. Talking loosely ahead of those games, we will be obviously previewing those matches closer to the time. We'll be doing Chelsea Man City on Wednesday, so look out for that. But looking ahead to those matches, what did we learn briefly? What did we learn from this final, which is going to impact on Wednesday?
Yeah, I think it's going to be very, very interesting. I think we now know that clearly City can take the game to Chelsea, and across these 4 matches, it's gone from City maybe able to nick one game where City might be able to win the league game if Chelsea rest up, if Chelsea rest up for the other games. But it's now gone from that to City will have a good opportunity and will have a good chance at winning at least one, if not more, of these games. The thing is, it's just will it be the right ones? They've already lost the final. That was the wrong one to lose. And again, they could end up winning in terms of they could end up winning the first leg for the UCL. But again, that is out. If they end up losing the second leg, then that again is the wrong one to win. So
they could win 3-0, lose 2-0.
They could, but if they win 3-0, I'd be absolutely stunned. But yeah, I think that it's important. Cushing would have come in and expected to win every single one of these 4 games against Chelsea, the same way that Bon Pastor expects to win all 4 against City. So I think he's probably Cushing he loves the League Cup. He's won it 3 times already with Manchester City. He'd have loved to make it 4, but he will now view getting into that top 3 and getting into the UWCL semi-finals. And I think it's going to be a lot more difficult than perhaps Chelsea and people anticipated.
Yeah, indeed. Well, Chelsea Women's League Cup champions 2025. they win it for the first time since 2021. An important victory in that sense. That rounds up our analysis, our review of the game. We'll be back tomorrow reviewing the WSL weekend. Only 4 matches in this weekend, but still we'll be back to review that tomorrow. On Tuesday we'll be having our Tuesday, Wednesday previews to the Champions League games, and of course our live coverage of the Women's Champions League. Videos out all this week. It's a busy time to be a women's football fan. That's why we're here to cover it all for you, to make sure to join us for all of that. That, though, rounds up today's coverage. Get involved in the comments below. Give us your thoughts on the game. Thank you guys very, very much for watching, and we'll see you next time. See ya.